Welcome to L'Arte dell'Arme, the Bolognese podcast, where we discuss the intricacies of the Bolognese tradition with practitioners, translators, authors, and teachers working to bring the art back to life. Today's guest is Eleonora Rebecchi. Eleonora is the sales director and sales manager at Malleus Martialis. She is a graduate of the Academy of Fine Arts in Bologna. Eleonora, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Joshua. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for hosting me. I will be very glad to talk about Malleus Martialis' vision of making, so design, and Dima this night with you.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you here. I think that I have far too many of your swords, but they, in my quest to find swords that match, you know, the specifications that I'm looking for swords that
Mhm.
are perfect for the Bolognese system, I always come back to Malleus Martialis and the products that you guys make. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, you went to school in Bologna and you studied at the Fine Arts Academy in Bologna. What was it like living in Bologna?
Living in Bologna was a delightful experience for me because Bologna is a vibrant, modern city that, anyway, preserves the ancient soul with all its towers and streets and stone everywhere. I had a very, very good time there, also because I stayed there for 5 years. And it was like a really, really deep experience for my life, for my mind, for the studies I had there. My eyes were able to be wide open in that time.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think, it's sometimes when we're looking at words on a page and thinking of things from a historical context, it's hard to kind of put ourselves in that place, but I can imagine that there are a lot of people who would love to trade places with you and have an opportunity to live in a city like Bologna,
Yeah.
um, such an ancient city, and so much rich history, especially from an academic perspective.
Yeah.
um,
With all the museums and life, because Bologna today is still a city full of life, even if it's not big like Rome or other cities. It has something magical.
I bet, and amazing food too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, in terms of Malus Martialis, you guys have really taken the HEMA world by storm over the last couple of years, and a lot of that seems to result from your emphasis on attention to detail and quality. But your range of designs are so unique and gorgeous and span, centuries of historical texts.
Mhm.
How has this evolution come about?
First of all, thank you. Because we feel like since we started, we sailed for a great journey and we have never stopped to look for our style through practice, research, and also our customers' feedback. As you said, I have a degree in fine arts, so my great passion for paintings, sculptures, visual arts in general has influenced a lot my way to look and design swords. But I'm not a skilled artist nor an educated researcher. Since I started along with Rodolfo, our smith, we always looked at original swords anatomies, and contemporary swordsmiths who were able to give a soul to their replicas. Moreover, practice makes perfect. Uh, so, observation, listening, and will to refine our skills to create something beautiful, functional, and performing was some kind of obsession during these years.
Yeah. So what kind of process goes into researching historical swords? How does that come about?
That's a very good question. It needs method. The first thing you need, as in many things in life and work, is method. I have mine. When we want to develop a new model or we work on commission, the time spent depends on the depth of the matter. First, I collect every possible info about the piece, period, geographical context, if original data are available or if I can collect them myself at the museum, particular traits and construction method when needed. And also, if there are related images in the history of art, studies and academic articles about that. Also, I have a very huge library at the workshop where I search and I can find similar examples. Above all, if we need to fill in the gaps, because many times you don't have all the info required to make the entire piece. And the second step, both if I have to create something not perfectly based on the reference, because maybe the pommel, as I said, is missing, or because the client asks for a current matching of pieces, or I have to be as faithful as possible, I will use all the photos, stats, and views to design the profile of the various components, starting from the blade. Possibly, I can check or find the proportion through the golden section method developed by Peter Johnson. That's my overview about my method.
No, that's really great. So you just referenced Peter Johnson, and I think especially for American hemists or people who are Bolognese practitioners in the United States, they're very familiar with Peter Johnson's work.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of stuff do you reference when you're looking at some of his methods?
First of all, I can say is approach to the study, because he analyzes every single tiny aspect of the sword, starting from the construction method and starting from all the particular things that a sword can present. I think that the most important thing I admire in his work is the way he sees the sword as an object. I cannot, maybe I am not explaining that in the best way, but he has a perception of the sword as an object that is not so common.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think you explained that really well. And it's really fascinating too, I think. You know, just kind of trying to get into the headspace that goes into that design because, for us as like practitioners, oftentimes we really only get to see the end product and not necessarily the process that goes into it. But at the same time, we all really love swords. That's why we
Yeah.
do that, you know? And so I think it's fascinating because it almost feels like there's this magical process, it feels like there's this very old sense of alchemy that goes into creating these things that
Yeah,
are inanimate but and in some way alive.
yeah, absolutely.
So do you design your swords to have similar weights and balances to historical swords you've come across in your research?
I rely on original data when I design swords, but I'm not that scientific. I explain because it's a tricky matter. We only make plant swords due to the Italian law. Authorization can be achieved, but it's a long and expensive journey. So we are working on it, and it will need time. So I use the data to my advantage because the sword construction is fully dependent on its purpose. So the original data are adapted and oriented to the final usage. In the case of IMA swords, we'll have always to take care of flexibility, resilience, and dynamics. But in the end, the dynamics will have to be as coherent as possible for the swordsmanship style the sword or the swords require. So it's exactly a matter of finding the right tiny balance between all the aspects and parts.
Yeah. So, how does that process develop from the specifications of a historical sword to the design of like a modern HEMA sword?
Usually, we are obliged to keep the edge thicker than a sharp sword, of course. So this is one of the main obstacles. And in the design process, I usually apply some compensations. For example, by applying fullers or adapting the length, the thickness, the width of the various parts of the sword. It's a matter of compromises many times.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in you do you go I know that you said that a lot of the information that you get is from your library or from sort of research that you do online and stuff like that. Have you had an opportunity to go to museums and see historical swords?
Yeah, I had the honor and the pleasure to be able to handle some original swords and to trace them and also register the stats of them. It's not so easy, especially in Italy. We have a real difficulty in approaching museums because they look at us like, what are you doing? What do you want from me? But on the other hand, for example, we had the honor and the pleasure to be at the Marzoli Museum in Brescia,
Mhm.
where we had the chance to have the famous two-handed sword from Brescia,
Mhm.
and it was delightful because despite the sword as being heavily health altered, has a magnificent presence. The pommel, the guard, the large fuller blade are amazingly nice, aesthetically speaking. Another sword I really remember with a lot of admiration is the boy's sword preserved in the Solingen Klingen Museum in Germany. Uh, that's a very particular sword because it has tiny dimensions and it was meant probably to be for a young rich boy. And it's a deadly weapon, and it has a peculiar construction. The pommel and the part of the grip are one piece with the blade. The gilded details and the fancy filings upon scales give it a royal look. They are, I think, some of the most stunning swords I saw in my career.
Huh, that's fascinating. We're gonna have to get you over and get you into up to Wisconsin so you can go see the Oakshott Institute swords at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I really would like to. Oakshott for me is something that I always relied upon since my soul smithing, if we can call it like that,
Mhm.
started in 2014, and because Italian occlology is a little bit uh, difficult in comparison with the Oakshott method. That's really more it's clearer, and also I think it's extensive than the Italian one, because the Italian occlology focuses on the aesthetic part of the sword. So and also some hypothesis of usage sometimes. So it's not so rational in a way. It's more an artistic approach to the sword. While Oakshott has a more rational way to look at the swords as a collector, and it was very useful and important for my education as a sword designer.
Yeah, no, that's really cool and fascinating because I think that's a really unique insight. I didn't know that there was a different well, guess I never really looked into it, but I didn't know that there was an Italian typology, and it's really fascinating that it's based on aesthetic. That's really
Yeah.
fascinating. um, yeah. So, I mean, how does modern HEMA practice or trends in HEMA affect the designs you create?
Hmm. That's an interesting question. We make what we like to do generally. Of course, as I said, one of the main focuses is listening to our users' feedbacks, but making IMA sorts allowed us not to betray our philosophy and satisfaction for the work.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I always think about with your sword designs in particular, are that they're designed with functionality in mind. I mean,
Mm-hmm,
your spatulated tips, all of your swords have tremendous flex for
mm-hmm,
safety,
mm-hmm,
and but they're still designed like historical swords. Every time I pick up, my Malleus Marazzo, I think that, I feel like I'm holding a historical sword, or at least a sword
mm-hmm.
that matches the other sharp swords that I have.
Yeah.
Um, and I love that about your design because that's really what we're aiming for. And there's so many difficulties I feel like in creating that, where a lot of fetters that you'll pick up, like German fetter, like longsword fetters,
Yeah.
they represent an idea, but
Mm-hmm.
so many of them don't actually represent historical swords. When you pick up a fetter and then you switch to a two-handed sword, you feel
Mm-hmm.
the difference in the way that the sword is designed and how it's used. Whereas if I pick up my side sword, if I pick up my Marazzo, and then I pick up my sharp side sword that I have sitting behind me right now, um, I don't feel that much of a difference. It feels like it's the same weapon.
Did you know that the historical Federschwerter have a reverse taper? Uh, I explain. In the modern replicas or IMA renditions,
Mhm,
the Federschwerter are like big foils
mhm.
for sport, two-handed big foils in a way.
Yeah.
If you look at the original ones, the base of the blade is narrower than the point. There are some studies about that. Uh, which explain that it was meant for safety and also for the sport dueling for the time, and also that looking at the original specimen, the blade had a flexibility from both in the cut action and in the other axis of the blade. And this is very fascinating because I am really convinced that the feather that we use for sport are nothing compared to the ones that are preserved in the museums right now. They are really different, but I can understand why, of course, because we have some requirements, and also we have some rule sets too for the tournaments, and that's why functionality sometimes for the modern practice changes the original anatomy.
Yeah, that is incredibly fascinating. I did. Um, I've imagined that that's going to start a lot of conversations because that's going to definitely affect some people's opinions on things, and I love that.
Yeah.
Um, that's really great. Now, so one of the things I had asked Stephen Freitas if he wanted me to ask you any questions, and his question was, we often see in the Bolognese sources that they used blunt training swords as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
have you come across any like fencing specific blunt swords that were from the Renaissance, or maybe up?
during during museum visits, for
Yeah.
example.
Hmm.
Okay, okay. Nope, not yet, really. So, in general, my all the stats I have are about sharp swords. I saw some fencing trainers. My mind goes to some rapier-like blunt trainer in the Wallace collection, for example, that has a thickened point at the end. It has a rectangular cross section, and it has that point which is hammered and thickened. So it is very, very similar as a concept, a point of view. It's very similar to a modern Olympic foil, as it was some kind of parent, an ancestor. Okay,
Yeah, no,
but I didn't have any chance yet, unfortunately.
and that doesn't sound too dissimilar to what we see now from a lot of trainers, where you have some sort of either a spatulated tip, or like a broadened tip, or even a rolled tip, and then
Mhm.
sort of you know blunted edges. So
They are really different, really different. In the modern times, we look for the sword. We look for a sword that is really similar to the ancient one, but they didn't have that necessity. They were more towards a functional usage because they had swords.
yeah,
So that's the way.
that's really interesting. So are there any um, issues in historical designs that don't work for modern human practice, or vice versa?
Yes, most of the times, both the profile and the distal tapering of the original swords become the challenge. Also, the fanciness of many original swords has to be sacrificed for functional and cost reasons. Of course, that's one of the points. You always have to take care of the efficiency in the working process. You cannot rely on your creative soul alone, but you also have to rely on your tools, your skills, of course, and also above all times of development and working of peace. So that's I think these are the most important issues, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I had a bunch of user or I guess listener questions that they all seem to revolve around different pommel types. I think that's what
Yeah.
everybody wanted me to ask about. So one of them was, have you considered making a square Venetian pommel, as we often see in museum pieces?
Yes, but maybe not for regular models, but for custom ones, for example. And we already experimented those kind of shapes before, and I like them very much. But they need a little bit more time to be done.
Mhm.
So I think that I would suggest them for custom swords.
Yeah, and you guys just came out with the Maleficent, right? Which
Yeah.
is super cool.
Thank
That's
you.
the gorgeous pommel.
With
You
the
know,
horns.
I know. Every time I turn around and I think that I'm done buying swords from you guys come out with something interesting that I end up having to want to get. So it's I guess that's a good thing though, right? So what about hollow pommels? Have you guys I mean, there seems to have been a trend for hollow pommels in historical swords. Have you experimented with designing any hollow pommels?
It happened once. We cooperated once with a customer who was very skilled in wax casting. And so we developed together a custom medieval one-handed stock with the hollow pommel. It was made of bronze, and the result was impressive. He also wanted, for example, the pommel slightly rotated, like on the historical specimen. So it was a nice experiment, also with the hollow pommel and the rotated verse.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. So when you, I've heard this come up quite a bit, especially for people like I know that a huge proponent of this is Roland Wacheka, but with the rotated pommels, how does that historically show up in swords? With the do they rotate it so it angles with the hand? Does it so if like
Yeah.
if I'm a right-handed fencer, would I angle my pommel to the right or to the left?
You have it rotated to the left because in the cut the position of the pommel helps you to keep the sword not like an hammer but like a knife, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
Okay. And also this feature is very well present in high medieval and medieval swords in general. Also because of the anthropometry. Sorry, this is a very difficult word for me.
That's okay.
Okay. The way the wrist and the hand are on our body. Okay,
Yeah.
and that anatomy follows exactly. uh, it comes to my mind a nice and funny example that can be useful. I don't know if you know vertical mouses for the computer. They are not like regular mouses,
Mhm.
but your wrist and your hand stay following the angle of the arm. Okay, so the ergonomics of that object is exactly the same of the concept behind the rotated pommel.
Oh yeah, no, that's fantastic. Um, that's and it's really interesting. Have you seen any rotated pommels for like wheel pommels and things like that in later swords? Was that something that was still being done with some Renaissance swords, or did it sort of fade over time?
Um, I don't have so many references about that in later swords, but there's one thing I can say, despite I don't have the necessary info. If a sword is meant to cut, I think that that is a very good feature. If a sword is meant to thrust, then a pommel with the a round cross section,
Mhm.
a circular cross section, like I don't know, a fig pommel or a sandstopper pommel, for example. It's also very coherent with the rest of the sword and its usage. I am very convinced by the fact that every part of the sword is always perfectly fitted on the final purpose.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I have a lot of your swords. I have a lot of different pommels.
Yeah.
and and a lot of, I feel like, yeah, the different swords with different pommels sort of tell me what that sword wants to do. They almost provide their own personality to the sword. Um, thinking about like the Type 19 side sword, the 1432, I think
Yeah.
it is. That one. just wants to cut. I love using that sword for sword and buckler. They just feel like they go together, But then I use my Malleus Martialis with the Marazzo 2 that
Yeah.
I have that has the fig pommel, and it wants to do everything. I mean, I, it's just it feels like it's my Swiss Army knife of side swords. So um, I have all these different personalities in my swords, and they kind of just tell me what they want to do.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's not you who govern the sword, but it's the contrary. You only help it to do what you want, but she is leading.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's like it's like the opposite of a dance, right? Instead
Yeah.
of yeah, exactly. I like that. Um, so, swords are the queen of historical arms, but there are a plethora of other arms that make up a lot of Italian fencing traditions, especially in the Bolognese tradition. Have you guys tried designing trainers for like partisans, rancas, spiedos, halberds, or spears?
Honestly, not yet. We made some of them most medieval in our career, through our career, but we never had the necessary request to design them, to produce them also. So honestly, I can say not yet. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, I'm gonna start a campaign right now for all of everybody who listens to this podcast to send you an email and request that you guys make a partisan trainer, because we need a good partisan trainer. That's what the community needs right now.
And I will listen as always.
Perfect. Perfect. So, Eleanor, beside being, the marketing manager and sales director um, at Malice, you were also a fencer. Tell me a little bit about your martial arts background and how you got started into HEMA fencing.
The first time I was looking for, I was wielding a sword and I was looking to have a sword. It was in 2011. Uh, oh my God, it's 10 years ago. I am getting old. Okay. And it was the time that I came home from Bologna to Mantua, because I'm from Mantua, and now I live in Florence. So I've always wandered a lot through Italy. And it was the fact that I was searching for a sport um, that could not annoy me so much, because I'm a person who is very uh, intellectual in a way. I like to overthink, like many artists, women, people who play with swords. And in the end, I found that school where I started, and it was like starting from Vadi and Fiore,
Mhm.
so medieval two-handed sword. And then when I moved to Florence, Rodolfo, who is our smith, also practiced and also taught fencing. He had school too, and I started to practice more fiore, less body, but I started with the London Tower fact book, so sword and buckler. And it was like yes, about between 8 and 5 years ago. And yeah, I kept up to study until I began to design and produce side swords. And that was the point where I decided to study a little bit more of side sword, because it was like, my God, side swords are so fascinating. I like to make them, I like to design them, but how do they behave? So I decided to take some lessons here in Florence, and it was very interesting because I saw analogies, but also the different and the development of the swordsmanship through the centuries.
Yeah, that's an awesome journey. Um, so do you guys ever, if you guys have a dispute at work, do you guys just ever draw swords on each other and start fighting?
Once we were quarreling in a funny way, and I had a pen in my hand, and it was like I tried to attack Rodolfo with a pen, and he said, "Stop! The pen hurts more than the sword." So so yeah, some kind of.
That is awesome. That's fantastic. Um, so as you've gotten into fencing with side sword, what kind of what's been the focus of your study? Have you looked at any of the Bolognese masters?
Currently, I am looking at Bolognese masters, but in I don't know if it's the word, but it's a mixing of some of their teachings.
Mhm.
When I study, my teacher or my instructor always points out where that move, that position, that action was taken from. But we don't study precisely Marozzo or Dalla Gocchie or Manciolino and so on. We study a method, something like a more transversal, I don't know if it's the right word, a transversal way to look at the treatises without forgetting about the coherence and the usage of the various techniques.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I know of quite a few schools that sort of operate in that way, um, and they produce really great fencers. So I think
Mhm.
that's really awesome. Um, so what is in your fencing experience, what is something that you think that we as a community can do to better reflect either the sources or the spirit of the sources in our fencing?
Hmm. This is a very important question. I don't know if I want to answer, but I will try because it's a very wide concept. Um, I think that we are on the right path because we are working a lot on spreading this culture all around the world. If you think about the 90s, we were a very little niche. We are still a niche, of course, but with the technology, the internet, and also this culture of revival of vintage in a way is a friend of our effort to share this passion of ours, um, to be even more uh, even more capable to communicate our tradition, our sport. I think that we should work a lot, and we are already doing it on the marketing. I am maybe I am a little inclined to think about marketing because it's one of the things that I always take care of. Also because it's not that simple to communicate in the right way what you do. If you use a wrong communication, people in our field, in the fencing field, will think, ah, yeah, knights are fighting in shiny armor, and that's it. If we are able to spread the culture and the fighting effort we make, the sport, the fascinating world behind the tournament. Okay, because not everyone wants to make tournaments, not everyone wants to compete. So we are really open to a lot of different individuals who can enjoy from practicing swordsmanship. So communication is the point.
Yeah, that's really great insight. And I agree with you. I think that, communication and understanding that, like you said, that, a lot of people are looking for different things when they come into HEMA too, is
Mhm.
also super important because, not everybody wants to look at it as a sport. Some people want to just live the history. Um,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's just as important, as, somebody being a really good athlete or a really great, sport fencer. But, you know, the core of what HEMA is so much of rediscovering the history and
Yeah,
reconnecting with it, in a way that's meaningful.
exactly. I totally agree. And that's amazing, in my opinion, because not so many sports are able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I, I mean, I'm a history nerd, so it's not, it is my driving passion, of what
Yeah.
really connects me to history, or to HEMA in general. But at the same time, even in our club, we have lots of different people who came to HEMA for different reasons. I mean, some people kind of came to it because they were they were, we have some people who have written Dungeons and Dragons books.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have some who are just, they love fantasy and they love the idea of fantasy and engaging with swords because of fantasy. And then we have
Yeah.
some people that are passionate about history, and we have some people who are just like, hey, this is a really cool way to work out. It beats the heck out of running.
But that's absolutely right, because swords are cool.
Exactly. I mean, you just, there's different way to look at it for everybody, but in the end they're all beautiful and unique and wonderful, and I think it should be
Yeah.
celebrated. Yeah.
Yeah. What a lovely, what a lovely concept.
Yeah. So what can we expect, from you guys coming up soon? Are there anything in the works that you're excited about?
We have a lot of things that are coming up, beyond products that we are developing every year. And right now we are also adding a lot of products in the next month to our catalog. Also new side sorts, also Venetian models. If you
Ah,
follow us, if you follow us on our social media, you have already seen something Venetian inspired. And I think, anyway, that the most huge and ambitious project we are working on, and I think it's the first place I say this news. So it's the first announcement, public announcement. We are working on the e-commerce platform for our website.
awesome.
And this will be a very great innovation for us, because currently I'm managing all the various orders and requests all by hand, all by myself and manually.
Mm.
And it's a very, very huge work, also because many times I don't have only to take care of customers, but also to about designs and management. So it's a hard job for me, but I will be very, very glad when all these stars will be aligned in the sky. And we will be able also I will be able to be more efficient and also more faster, yeah, not more but faster
Mhm.
in replying and to follow the custom orders, for example.
Well, I think that's a testament to you because everybody that I have spoken to about Malleus Martialis, the first thing that they say is that you guys have the best customer service of any HEMA supplier that they've ever dealt with. Um, and I can attest to that from my own experience. And it's something that I think really makes you guys unique, and I think it's something that has really endeared your business to so many HEMA people because you are very honest and transparent, and you communicate phenomenally. And to hear that of your challenges just makes it feel like even more of a Herculean effort because
Yeah.
it's incredible what you do. And
I am always very committed to the customer requests, even if I can take a few days or also sometimes for difficult requests a few weeks, because I always try to empathize and to be in the customers close. So I try to understand how I would like to be treated. I would like to be yes, hosted or also listened to. So that's the point. When someone asks me something, I always ask myself how I would like to be answered to a question like that. And I think that's the best way to discuss something with not only with the customers but also with a friend. So I have that image in my mind. Customers are not only customers because they come and buy. They are people and they are interesting people and I can share something with them. That's why maybe people are feel okay when they speak with me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, it's empathy goes a long way to making people feel good about their experience. And the fact that you can do that, I think, makes you very special indeed. Um,
Thank you so much. It's really I could cry for that, you know.
well, I mean, we went through a lot this fall, you and I, having to deal with.
I spoke a lot. I'm sorry.
No, 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 no. Like this fall, I ended up one of my swords that I had ordered ended up getting lost in the post, and you guys didn't hesitate to just take care of the situation, get a new sword made, and have it sent my way. Um,
Hmm.
and for me, and that's endearing to like be a customer and to know that things go wrong, but you still have somebody on the other end that's
Yeah,
gonna work with you and make sure that you get what you were looking for,
yeah.
instead of trying to you know not.
Issues happen. They are part of the everyday life,
Mhm.
and we can't control them. We can only fix them. So let's fix them.
Yeah, no, that's great. All right, well, Eleonora, let's go ahead and wrap it up there. It was an absolute honor to have you on here. I really appreciate you coming on, and I think that everyone's going to get a lot out of this episode. So thank you for myself, and thank you on behalf of everybody else that listens.
Thank you, Joshua. I enjoyed this interview a lot, and it was a really, really great honor to meet you, to be with you this night.
And that concludes another episode of Le Arte dell'Arme, the Bolognese podcast. I want to thank Eleonora again for coming on and joining me. That was a tremendous amount of fun. It was great getting to know her. Next week's guest is going to be Michael Chester, the curator of Wiktenauer. We're going to talk a little bit about what it takes to transcribe, interpret, and translate texts. So definitely stay tuned for that. Quick housekeeping announcement. I'm going to start to deviate from the interview format a little bit and start to incorporate and intersperse throughout the interviews a couple of different episodes where I'm going to do a hyper focus on the plays, starting with Marazzo's book 2. My goal is to just do a textual analysis from a tactical and strategic standpoint and kind of get into the higher level thinking that's going into the plays and really setting out a framework that can potentially help people in their studies of the text, sort of like what I did with Eric Weiss and the horsemanship. So I don't think that they'll be in order. I think I've already got a few people to commit to doing Sword and Dagger and Sword Alone. So I'll probably go ahead and get those episodes out to you guys once I've got them recorded. But they will probably still fall in the weekly format. So just stay tuned for that, and hopefully it'll be encouraging content that'll be a benefit to everybody. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Just want to say thanks for listening, and stay saucy, my friends.